All right, welcome to another Insider Notebook here with James Palmer at Bleacher Report. A little under the weather. I'm a little stuffy, but bear with me. I'll be with you the whole 30 minutes coming up as we talk about everything that's going on within the NFL. There are games today. Make sure you set your fantasy roster, but we are going to be talking mostly what could be happening between now and the 4 o'clock trade deadline Eastern on Tuesday. That will be the bulk of our show. That's been what we've been talking about each and every day this week as I've been with you. I'll be with you on Monday, and I'll be on Bleacher Report pretty much throughout the entire day on Tuesday, leading into that deadline and after that deadline, talking about the moves that maybe could have happened but didn't, and the moves that did happen and how they impact the rest of the league. We'll be going over all of that throughout the course of the day on Tuesday. Don't forget to jump in the chat. The chat has been on fire, by the way, lately. This whole week, the chat has been bonkers, and you guys are throwing out a lot of really good ideas, arguing with each other, which is fine, calling me names, which is fine. There's a compliment or two in there, which is also fine. We're going to get through the Trey Hendrickson Sweepstakes. Has that changed at all? Have the Bengals changed their thinking at all? And maybe could today's result impact their thinking before Tuesday? We'll get into that. The Eagles and Myles Garrett. What the rumor this has been. Is there truth to it? I'll get to that in just a moment. Also, players to be moved. Who's kind of more likely to go out there and possibly find a new home before that 4 o'clock deadline on Tuesday? And then Miami. Are they going to be big sellers? We just talked about on Friday when they made the big move to change who's kind of running the operation right now, at least for the course of this season, with moving on from Chris Greer, their general manager, and putting Champ Kelly in there as the interim GM. Does that change their thinking before 4 o'clock? And then Chris Olave to the Bills. Is that something that we could possibly see? That's a hot name and a hot matchup, I'd like to say, or connection that a lot of people are curious about. Let's get into the Trey Hendrickson Sweepstakes as we get cranking here. And I'll just say this. It doesn't appear like Cincinnati's stance on Trey Hendrickson has changed because of history being one part of it. It's just something Duke Tobin and the Cincinnati Bengals just don't do it. The Joe Flacco trade was kind of an anomaly. They don't really acquire trades, acquire players during the season. They don't really like to give away players during the season. And if you look at the way that they are wired, and you talk to anybody there, they will tell you this: they are not in the habit of getting rid of key players, getting rid of talent that will help them win football games in the middle of the season. It's just something Duke Tobin doesn't do. But the reason we're talking about this is, could that thinking change with the loss today? Joe Flacco's also dealing with an AC joint strain in that throwing shoulder. He's expected to play, but what if it gets re-aggravated and they're stuck with, oh yeah, it sounds rude to say, but stuck with Jake Browning for the course of the season until they can get Joe Burrow back, which is still slated, to my understanding, to be somewhat in mid-December. And could they be still in the running? Adam Schefter put out that report that some teams think their thinking could change regarding Trey Hendrickson if they do lose this game. They fall to 3-6. But I wanted to put something even more clear. Even if they lose this game, the division, amongst other ones, really, this one alone, it could be one at 8-9. It could be one at 9-8. And if nobody's really running away with the division like we expected the Ravens to do, but because of this massively slow start, they haven't, does that kind of change the thinking of Cincinnati that they still are somewhat in it and they will continue to operate the way that we've seen them operate in the past? I would think teams are going to continue to call, whether it's the 49ers or the Eagles or the Cowboys or any other teams looking for edge rush help. I think they're going to continue to call even after this game to see if that stance has changed at all. Because we have to remember also, when I mention history, what has gone on with Trey Hendrickson and his organization in the past. We all remember him in the outstanding golf attire, standing out there during OTAs, talking about how he's wanted a commitment from the organization. They really haven't done that. They gave him a massive pay raise, but didn't extend him past this year. So the contract is up after this year. They haven't made any sort of guarantees to him moving forward in years ahead. So he could be set to be a free agent. But they also still have the ability to franchise tag him. They could do that, and they could keep him once again. Now, we know he's been upset there, but at the same time, I've never heard of him demanding to be traded, in these days leading into the deadline. So we'll see what ends up happening. But right now, it still sways much more towards Trey Hendrickson staying than it does him being available. But it doesn't stop teams from continuing to try and teams continuing to see if there's something that they can do or an offer that they can make. And if you do make an offer, my assumption would be Cincinnati would want a player in return because, as I mentioned, they don't like to give away players and talent that help them win football games in season. It's just something they don't do. If they ever considered this, I would assume Duke Tobin would want a player back that could help them on that defensive side of the ball immediately within this 2025 season. if they were going to make a move. And then there'd obviously be other aspects to the trade that would play into it as well. But to my understanding right now, they're still not in the business of getting rid of Trey Hendrickson, but that is not going to stop teams from calling. All right, this is really rocking already here, guys. I love this on the chat. I didn't know how Sunday was going to go. I didn't know you all had your your regular Sunday situations going on. Oh, let's go, James. I love it. A lot of Philly talk at the top. We're about to get into that. What else we got? Garrett to the birds. Let's make it happen, Howie. I hope Brees Hall gets traded. We'll get to Brees a little bit. I heard Mahomes was on the block. I haven't really heard that. It's an underlying thing apparently you guys got going on. Did I miss any information about Jacoby Myers? Not yet. Rick Woolen to the Vikings. We'll see what happens. All right, you guys are really throwing stuff out there. I love it. Giants, please go get Jalen Waddle. I'll give you a lot of information on Waddle coming up as well. Let's see what's going on. Man, what the Bucks going to do? I kind of mentioned up front they could be looking around, but I don't see them being massive buyers right now. KC will not make a trade. We'll see. I think they're looking up front, but it doesn't mean a trade has to happen. Jermaine Johnson to the Pats, hopefully. I think that's a name that a lot of teams are interested in. I think the price tag is maybe higher than the buyers would like right now, and that's kind of the norm, and I'll get into why throughout the show. That price has been pretty high on a lot of different people throughout what's going on here. Who is that behind you is kind of a terrifying thing to hear right now during the holidays. Let's get into Myles Garrett and the Philadelphia Eagles and these rumors. This one is connected because obviously this is one of the best players that is in the NFL right now. This is one of the very few players that will be going to Canton in 5 years immediately after they officially hang it up and retire. This is a bona fide superstar, Myles Garrett. So I did ask, because of all the pelts on the wall, I asked Copilot, when was the last time a multi-time All-Pro under the age of 30 was traded at the NFL deadline? Any of you know? Anybody know who it was? 2022, Roquan Smith goes over to the Ravens from the Bears. That was a massive trade. That was the last time we've seen somebody of this caliber type of player here that was dealt. I don't want to say, throw cold water on this for all those Eagles fans out there and all of my boys back home that have been texting me, but never say never. But right now, from my understanding, talking to a variety of people, this isn't happening. Myles Garrett is expected to stay with the Browns. But I understand the buzz, and I was kind of trying to piece all of this together and thinking about it. If you remember back in February, Myles Garrett was making the rounds on Radio Row, and he was upset. He didn't want to play for the Browns, and he asked for a trade, and he wanted that. The team that I heard from other teams that they were scared Myles Garrett would wind up with was the Philadelphia Eagles. And there were other teams going, man, this is something Howie's going to do. He's going to swing. He's going to pull this off, and we're all going to be terrified of this Eagles defense with the addition of Myles Garrett. They were a hot name connected to him back in February. Obviously, he ends up signing the massive contract and going back to the Browns. We know that he's been obviously frustrated in the past. He's been frustrated a little bit now, even though he's playing outstanding. And that's how this thing kind of comes together, because also Howie Roseman is in the market for a pass rusher. He certainly is. I was texting with somebody this morning going, I hope we really, really acquire a pass rusher. It's something that a lot of people in that building would like. So you connect all the dots. I understand why people, specifically in Philadelphia, are curious if this is something that could happen. The dead money from the Browns side of things would be astronomical. It's like $61 million. It would just be just unbelievable. Now, if Howie gives them 3 first-rounders, then, you could kind of handle a little bit of that. You saw what Denver was able to do with all the dead money of the Russell Wilson trade, and then they up and, more or less released him. And so there's ways around it in some capacity, but the number would be bigger than we've ever seen a number be before in the past. And then I also know that this offseason, I was hearing from people in Philadelphia that the idea was Howie understands a lot of the contracts he has. He understands a lot of the contracts that are on the horizon, whether it's Jalen Carter's massive contract, whether it's Quinyon Mitchell or Cooper DeJean or some of these other deals they're going to have to, make in the next couple of years. He's wanted to get younger on the defensive side of the ball. He's wanted to get maybe cheaper on the defensive side of the ball. He's really valued a lot of picks. Especially on the defensive side of the ball and trying to add talent that way through the draft. So that kind of plays into a part of this as well, is that you lose a lot of massive draft picks. You get older with Myles Garrett, but also he is an outlier. I get it too. It's you throw everything out the window if you have the ability to acquire a player like this. But right now, this doesn't appear to be something that is happening. I am so sorry to all the people in Philadelphia that they're doing. James, any rumors on the Ravens? They are thinking about adding anybody up front, whether it's a pass rusher or a defensive tackle is something that they'd be looking at. Kirk Cousins looks like he's still staying put. Jeffrey Simmons is not going anywhere. I don't think Brees is going anywhere. I think that's probably true too. as of right now. I think, and I'll answer the Brees Hall one kind of right now and where that's at. It had the appearance that maybe they'd give up a fourth round pick for him or something like that. And now when you look at where they're at and where they are with their offense and how he's this focal point of their offense, essentially, it doesn't really give the thought that they really just want to give him away. I wouldn't rule out him being part of their plans moving forward. That's a possibility. I know he's a free agent. I know they just don't want to give him up. I think it would take a day two pick for them to really even consider that. And I'm not sure if anybody's offering that for Brees Hall. There's a maybe be a greater chance right now as we speak that he stays than if he departs. Anything can change. Somebody can come through with that offer, but it just doesn't look like they're going to give him away like we kind of maybe thought this offseason. I know they have two good young backs that they like, and they have a young backfield that they could lean on even if he's gone. But I think they're not just going to go, hey, well, he's available. What are you going to offer us? I think it's going to be a much higher situation than that. So speaking of where he stands, let's get into like players that could most likely be moved because I'm not sure if Brees is really part of that. These players, I think, all have a greater chance to maybe be part of that. I think one of these pass rushers with the Titans are most likely going to be on the move. You see Arden Key there on this list. It could be him or Draymond Jones, who's been an inside guy before and then moved to the outside this year. I just think the Titans are really open for business, more so on the defensive side of ball than the offensive side. I know some teams are calling about Calvin Ridley, and maybe they're interested there. But I just think there's a greater chance that one of these pass rushers, and they might be at a lower level in terms of the compensation you have to give up than one of these guys here, where you see at the top of the list in Jalen Phillips. I think Phillips is obviously a name that a lot of people are interested in. He's younger. He's definitely in a spot where he could be moved. He's in that fifth year of his that last year of his deal right now or whatever. That fifth year option he has. It's going to be either him or Bradley Chubb, I think, are going to be on the move. I think one of them are going to depart, and Matthew Judon could be also one of those. I think one of the Dolphins pass rushers are going to be on the move. And then I have Rashid Shaheed on here. I think the asking price has been really high right now. I think Mickey Loomis is doing that on purpose. A lot of people are interested in their receivers. Obviously, Chris Olave, which doesn't seem very likely, but we'll get it. We'll get it talking to Chris Olave later in the show. But it looks like maybe Shaheed is here. He's in the last year of his deal. Teams are interested in that speed. Teams are interested in what he can bring. They've kind of been turned off by what Mickey Loomis's probably asking price is, or how he's handled these negotiations, or just really these calls as a whole. We'll see if that changes before Tuesday. And I think Mickey also understands that there's kind of a lack of talent that's available at the wide receiver position before this deadline. He's using that to his advantage. I think there's a chance that that could kind of change. I mentioned Quincy Williams on here. I know a lot of people are interested in Quinn Williams. I talked about him on Friday, that there could be a potential that the Jets move on from Quinn Williams. He's an outstanding player. He's still very young. If you're going to try to rebuild, maybe that's the type of player you look into moving. I don't think they're going to, I don't think they want to give up Quinn Williams, but if they're going to get a first round pick and something else for him, that might be the type of player that helps you change things if you're the Jets, as opposed to like getting real capital for a player. But I think Quincy Williams is definitely available, and I think he could maybe be on the move. And Jacoby Myers down there, listen, the Raiders haven't gotten as many calls as they thought they would on Jacoby Myers. They did bring back Tyler Lockett. Well, they kind of reunited him with Geno Smith. But I don't think Pete wants to give away players. I think they understand where they're at, but also I think they could understand where they're at after this season and could part ways with Myers. It's in the last year of his deal. But I do think that price could change after today and before the deadline, and he could be potentially on the move. All right, before we get to Miami big sellers, let's see what we got here. Matthew Judon really hasn't done much for Miami this year. I suppose you'd only get a sixth rounder or best, or a seventh rounder, or some sort of swap. Yeah, he would be like traded to help your rotation at your pass rusher spot. I think that would be something that you would maybe think about doing, because he'd be able to just make you a little deeper in that set. Chuba Hubbard, I don't think he's on the move at all. Hendrickson to Indy, obviously everybody makes that connection with Lou Anarumo and potentially maybe banging on the door of Chris Ballard. Chris Ballard just doesn't make in-season trades. Now, he has a different team this year with the best record in football. In the 8 years that Ballard's been there, he has not really been active at the trade deadline. He's only made one trade. That was when Naheem Hines in 2022 actually wanted to be moved, and it ended up changing there. KC is going to make two trades. Was that Hall and a D-line? Okay. I know they're looking at D-line for sure. I think they're still kind of looking at running back, because they did dodge a bullet a little bit with the knee injury for Isaiah Pacheco. There is no team in the NFL that has the equity for Myles, plain and simple. I just kind of mentioned that. You're saying a lot about what about denial? I don't know what that means. Steelers potential trades. I know they're still looking at receiver. I know they're looking at the defensive side of the ball a little bit too. I think they're really trying to evaluate if Roman Wilson and Calvin Austin can kind of hold things down with where they're at. Texans, I think they're looking on the offensive line. Running back would be something that Houston could potentially be looking at as well. I'm very excited to see that Texans Broncos matchup today. I think that's one that's really going to show Sean Payton if this offense that went out and played really, really well against the Cowboys is for real, because that is a far different defense than we saw um, from the Cowboys a week earlier with that they actually went out there and really did stuff. We don't need Chubb. I don't know who we is. Javante season. Oh, maybe we's Cowboys. I don't know. Any updates on Chargers moves? I think they're looking to get a little deeper on the offensive line if they could. But I don't know if I see them to be all very, very active. Denver rumors. I think Denver's still looking at a tight end, maybe a Y tight end, kind of blocking and receiving type tight end. There's people outside of Denver that think they should be looking at receiver. I haven't heard that much from Denver. I think they like some of the young guys, but I think Sean Payton's going to get, like I said, a good idea of where things stand after today when they play Houston. I also think they could use some offensive line depth. I think that's something they could be interested in. All right, Miami big sellers. We talked on Friday after Chris Greer was relieved of his duties, mutually parted ways from that general manager spot, as he's been there forever. And now it's Champ Kelly who's kind of running things. And I think the interesting aspect of this, and now that I've had a little time to think about it, is now the process of teams calling is now changed. Chris Greer's been kind of like, I don't want to say hanging up on anybody, but he's been more or less saying we're not really selling a bunch of our players. We're not really for sale. The conversations have been kind of short. They haven't really kind of developed very much. And now you have somebody different answering the phones, and now teams are curious what kind of responses will we get when we call on Jaden Phillips, or we call on Bradley Chubb, or we call on Jalen Waddle, and we'll get to Waddle right here. I think that's why the timing of this actually happens. I think that's why this happened before the deadline, because you wanted a person with a different mindset. Sorry, again, a little under the weather, so I've got to keep that throat, from getting dry. So I think they wanted this to happen before the deadline, so they had the opportunity to somebody else answer the phone, somebody else that's job does not really rely on these players staying and helping them keep their job and playing well, that there's a different set of thinking. So I do think that's why this was happened prior to the deadline. So now when they're getting calls, I think there's a little bit of a different thought process, and I think that's what teams were looking for now that they're calling on these teams. And I think Jalen Waddle is probably the one that we really want to talk about with this. I think they were more or less getting hung up on about Jalen Waddle, and the Dolphins didn't want to move him at all. I still don't think they want to, but I think they're willing to listen now. And this is a marquee player that's still young, that's under contract next season at a very reasonable, in terms of top tier receivers, very reasonable number. And he can play in a variety of offenses, which is why other teams would be interested in him. But I do think he's still very valuable to what's happening moving forward. I think the Mike McDaniel aspect of this is still extremely important, because if Mike ends up staying, and there's a thought right now that Mike stays this year or past this year, if that thought's in the building, then you want to kind of keep Jalen Waddle, probably because he operates at his best in what Mike does, which is the heavy motion that's within that offense, the yards after the catch, the short crossing routes, all these different things that Jalen Waddle can do. And so I think teams have been asking about him. They were told kind of flat out no before. I don't think that's the case anymore. So now I think with the change, teams are getting an opportunity to see really what the asking price would be, because I don't think they were finding that out before. And like with a lack of talent at the receiver position that's potentially available, I think teams are getting a clearer message about what's exactly there. I think they would consider it for the right price. I don't think the Dolphins want to do it. I think they want to be able to hear, and they weren't able to hear what that price was prior to this change at the general manager spot. And so I think that's why they kind of wanted to do it. Yes, I'd be surprised if he lands somewhere else. I very much would be. He's important to this Dolphins offense. He's important to this team, but I do think they're listening now, and I think that's the difference than we've seen in the past. I do think, like I mentioned, one of these edge rushers are probably most likely going to be on the move, whether it's Bradley Chubb or it's Jalen Phillips, who's 26, currently playing on that fifth-year option. The salaries are different in the two. The payments different in the two. We know Philly's interested. Vic Fangio has ties to Chubb from both Denver and Miami. He has ties to Jalen Phillips and having him for a year down there in Miami. And I think Howie Roseman has a history, not I think I know, of listening to Vic Fangio when there's certain players that he's definitely interested in. And I think that's a big part of this as well, is that Philly has some ties and Philly has some interest and Philly has, the ability to try to go make that move. So I want to keep that as one that's possibly open. All right, let's see what else we got here. Because I picked up Isaiah Davis. Tell me that Brees News, please. Yeah, I don't see that happening right now, but they're on a bye anyways. Minnesota trading for a quarterback that will actually play. Big game for J.J. McCarthy today. Just a massive game for J.J. McCarthy. The way that they have set this up, it's been very fascinating, and I think we'll all be watching today. You think Jets move Brees Hall? I mentioned that. I don't think they're going to give him away. I think they're going to day 2 pick, and then they will consider it. I think that thinking has shifted from what it was before. Trey Hendrickson gone. I still don't get the sense he's going anywhere just because that's not what the Bengals do. But I do think teams are fascinated to see after today, if they do lose, fall to 3-6, would he potentially be available? Colts. I think everybody wants to see the Colts make a move on defense. Like I said, it's not something Chris Ballard does, but I do think the thinking is a little bit different this year than years past. And I think they know in the secondary they could use some help. Up front, they could use some help. And they could make a move. Doesn't need to be a massive splash, but I think they could make a move to make this defense better. Feel better, bro. I think that's everybody's kind of telling that I sound terrible, which is awesome. Uh, feel better, Jimmy James. Thank you. After Jerry is nearly a century. I don't know what that means. Jalen Waddle, a cornerstone from Miami. The other part is his contract. Like, it's very reasonable the rest of this way out and next year. So I don't think they like that they have control of that as well. Is it McDaniel or Tua at this point? Or is there a scenario where they're both with Miami next year? I think there is a scenario where they're both back. I've said on here a bunch, and then Ian Rappaport, my buddy over at NFL Network, had a report out there about the options that they have with Tua. I think I've told you guys over the last couple of weeks, $54 million is guaranteed next year. So there's a very good chance that he's most likely going to be your quarterback if you're the Miami Dolphins in 2026. You could part ways with him. I don't think the trading ability is really there. If you up and release him, the dead money is massive, but you could do it. I mean, we always talk about how Denver did it with Russell Wilson. But I also look at, you keep Mike McDaniel going, this is a very specific player in Tua Tagovailoa. Mike McDaniel has been able to find a way to make him successful and design an offense very specific to him. And we've seen Tua play his best football under Mike. When you see the quarterbacks that are coming out in 2026, and kind of there's some question marks around that group, do you kind of say, maybe we should continue with what we have with Mike and Tua in 2026 and reevaluate ourselves in 2027 because the options are maybe kind of better and we're in a kind of an interesting spot to where things don't really pan out for us anyways in 26 and we keep everybody. So I think that is part of this as well. Any Commanders news? I don't know how active they'll be. We know they were active with that massive deal with Marshawn Lattimore a season ago that hasn't really panned out entirely. I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of bought or sold. It went either direction. I think they have some pieces that maybe some people that would maybe be interested in. I also think that they wouldn't mind trying to acquire somebody, but I don't see them making a massive move. We'll see. What do you see the Ravens doing? I think up front is specifically a spot to look at on the defensive side of the ball. What else we got? Green Bay Packers receivers. Somebody could be on the move there if somebody's interested. A.J. Brown to the Bills. By the way, A.J. Brown would fit those Bills, that Bills offense really, 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 really well. He certainly would. What do we got? Panthers shopping Chuba Hubbard? No. Cowboys are gonna do anything. I think they're looking up front. I think they are. I don't think Jerry's gonna break the bank. I think he likes the picks that he has, but I do think they're still looking, and I think that's something that they'd like to do. What's the latest on the Bears? I think, excuse me. I think the Bears would like to be buyers. I think Ryan Poles would like to be aggressive. Let's see if they come out, they get a win today. If that happens, I think the aggressiveness might be even further. I think they know where their defense stands, and I think they could use some help in that sense. And I think, if you look at the way Ryan Poles has operated, I think that's something you could look at. Philadelphia getting Jaden Phillips, working out the deals as we speak. D. Smith knows it. See, there you go. I think that's definitely, there's a lot of dots to connect there. I talked to somebody in Philly this morning who was saying, I really, really hope we end up getting something done at an edge rusher spot. All right, Chris Olave to the Bills. Whew. My buddy Joe with The Athletic wrote a really good piece the other day about the issues that they have on the boundary and that Chris Olave would alleviate a lot of those things. Playing the Z for them, he would be outstanding. I don't disagree. I think Olave would be awesome in a Bills uniform. And if Brandon B wanted to be aggressive and you have this MVP type quarterback and you have a lot of really other good pieces on that offense and an offensive line that's very good, of course, I get it. Make a move. The problem is, I don't think Chris Olave is going anywhere. I think he's staying with the Saints. But I do think his teammate wouldn't be a bad option. Option B for Brandon Beane and Rashid Shaheed. I think the price on Rashid Shaheed could go down. Excuse me, could go down before the 4 o'clock deadline. I think it's kind of high right now, and I think teams are curious if it's going to go down. I think Mickey Loomis is using the scarcity a little bit of this receiver market to help him. We know that Shaheed's going to be a free agent after this season. I think they're going to want a day two pick for sure. I think the teams that are buying, though, would much rather give up a fourth or fifth round pick than give up a third round pick, or you know, most likely a third round pick, which is what some of these teams are looking for a receiver. And I think that's where kind of the hang up is with some of this. Somebody's going to bulk. Somebody's going to change. Is it going to be, the Raiders? Is it going to be the Saints? I think we're waiting to see that. But I think Brandon Beane's going to realize that he does need something on the outside to help his cause and help his offense, and we'll see if they can make a move. Olave to the Bills would be outstanding for Buffalo. I think everybody in Buffalo would think that'd be a slam dunk, but I don't see it happening because I don't think Olave's going really anywhere. Let's see what else we have here. So I've kind of flown through the show a little bit. And Mr. Palmer, that's very fancy. Will the Eagles get Trey Hendrickson realistically? I think Howie would like to try. I think he would. And I think he's one of the people that is actually probably calling Cincinnati more than other teams to see if this is a real possibility. This is just something Cincinnati doesn't really do. I think Howie's weighing all of his options in terms of what he can do to help his team out edge rusher wise. Howie, by the way, just made that deal. I don't know if everybody saw. They get that Jair Alexander. He comes in, a former first round pick who the Ravens kind of took a flyer on, and he was, I believe, a healthy scratch on Thursday. He's just not really fitting into what they're doing back there. Howie's trying to get some bodies, gets the Michael Carter trade from the Jets as well. And he's used up, some low-level capital to get some of these guys in the secondary to help them be deeper, help them be more versatile. But I know that they'd like to add something up front and be able to help themselves out up front if that's obviously the case. What's going on? This guy doesn't know this is all speculation. Cool. Well, appreciate it. What's the price for Chris Olave? It would be high. It would be, again, they're trying to work out a contract with him for him to stay with the Saints, but like you would have to offer something much higher than probably what Shaheed's price is or Jacoby Myers' price is, which is kind of like a third rounder. So is it a two? Is it a two and something else? Like I think the price would be relatively high. Are my Niners going to jump out there and get Hendrickson? They've been kind of calling since the start. And maybe one of the earliest teams to see if Hendrickson was going to become available after Nick Bosa went down. And I think they've been kind of aggressive. What the Niners need to really evaluate is, do we have the players right now in this roster? And we have an aging roster in some very important positions. And we've kind of reset things financially this year. Do we go out there and make a trade for a guy like Trey Hendrickson if we can and give up a lot of capital for him? Then that's going to push us over the edge, and we do have realistic Super Bowl hopes. I think they are getting healthier on offense. I think the loss of Fred Warner is irreplaceable, but that's the evaluation that John Lynch is going through right now, and I think that's a big part of it, of what's going on. Jerome Ford to the Pats or the Texans. I think he's definitely somebody that you wouldn't have to give up, my understanding, talking to people around the league, a lot of capital to get. I think we've seen they've gone younger in that backfield with the Browns, and they know where they stand in terms of their moving forward with these young running backs. I think you can get Jerome Ford, and I think Houston is looking for possibly adding a running back. Please, Falcons, please make a splash for a receiver. I hate to break it to you, I don't think they're going to. I think they just want Darnell Mooney to get healthy, and they think they're fine. Their offense runs through Drake London and Bijan Robinson, and then Kyle Pitts, and then that receiver. So I don't know if you make a splash because of just how they're built as an offense. That receiver on the outside that Mooney plays, like that's not a focal point of the offense. It's kind of option number 4. You don't make a splash if that's option number 4 right there. Oh, you're the GOAT, James. That makes me feel good after the recent insult from somebody else. Rico Dowdle, running back 1 now. That looks to be the case. That looks to be where it's at right now with Dowdle. Bucks doing anything doesn't seem like it's real hot right now. Jason's a great evaluator of talent. He loves working in the draft, but maybe somebody up front defensively if he can swing the right deal. But I'm not sure that's going to happen. Logan Wilson to Buffalo makes sense. Milano can't stay healthy. Logan Wilson lost his job, remember, in Cincinnati. So this is something that teams are definitely looking at. Hope you feel better soon, dude. Thanks. Really do appreciate that. So what's the next question here? What does the Colts do here? they get Hendrickson or stay quiet like Ballard does. I know they are salary cap hell right now. Yeah, that's part of this as well. Ballard's usually pretty quiet, but we haven't seen him in this position during his time in Indianapolis, and that's what I think we're all looking at is does he act differently now this team is in a different spot. I'm new to the show. Who's your team, James? I grew up in Philly, so I did grow up an Eagles fan my entire life. That's a good question. And so I do know still a lot about people in that organization. That's kind of where it's at. What else do we have on here before we bounce? Because I feel like total dump right now. All right, we're pretty much out of time. If guys, I always stay long and answer a lot of questions. I don't feel like I can do that right now. Ravens news, I kind of mentioned it. Do you think the Bears make any moves? I think Ryan Poles would like to be aggressive. Does that mean a move happens? We'll see, but I think he'd like to be aggressive. Okay. Any Miami edge rushers getting traded? Yeah, I think they are going to part with one of them. We'll see who it is, depending on who the buyer is. The price changes, but now Miami's completely different with somebody else and Champ Kelly running things. All right, everybody, I'm going to lay down to watch some games today. I will see all of you tomorrow and throughout all of Tuesday for the trade deadline extravaganza on Bleacher Report. Enjoy your Sunday of football. Set your fantasy lineups. Yeah, do that. Take it easy.